everybody. So the long-awaited demo, I just wanted to show you what we're going to be making, and then I wanted to show you kind of that result. So it should end up looking something like this. We should have some amount of a menu that interacts. You can see that as I hover over these, all of them are turning into buttons. Same with the logo. I have pictures in the back. I want you to have pictures too, but if you can get it to work with videos, then that would be amazing. If it can't handle it, that's okay too. There should be a little bit of animation. If you look over here in the right corner, some animation can pop up on page load and also on button click, and then it should start to also work if you switch pages. There should be a drop shadow on my logo, but it doesn't look like it likes the drop shadows. It does on here actually, maybe not. That might just be from the gradient behind it. But you can see that as you click the buttons, certain animations will pop up, and it should have a little bit of functionality, enough to give you a menu design, and then I'll leave it up to you. You guys are very capable designers, and I want to see what you create, but for me, I'm basing it off of the same cafe that we used in the demo for last week. My little cats are freaking out, but they make cute noises, so we're gonna leave them in the video. But yeah, just do your best. I want to see what you make, and let's get started. So back to InDesign. Here's what it should look like in InDesign. Right now, if you look at my pages, I have 6 different pages laid out. Use however many you need. I'm gonna say have a minimum of 3. So you'll need a home page and then 2 other pages. Since we had the trifold menu, you should be able to achieve that just fine. In addition to that, I'm going to show you guys how to make a QR code so that you can link from your trifold menu if you were to print it out and scan it and link to your online website. Okay, so let's go ahead and make a new document. We'll go to File, New, and Document. You might just open it up and have the document create folder. That'll be fine too. We're going to go to Mobile, View All Presets, and iPad Pro 12.9 inches. We want to uncheck the primary text frame. I'll put in 6 pages because I had 6 pages earlier. You put in however many you need. We don't need any gutters here, so we'll just set that to 0. And we just want these also in landscape orientation. After that, everything should be ready to go, so we'll just click Create. Okay, so now we're in our new document. This is a little bit of review from what we did in class, but go ahead and go to the A parent page, double click on that thumbnail. And if I zoom out now, you can see I'm just on that individual page. And keep in mind I'm on a PC this time, so things might look a little bit different for you on a Mac, but just try to follow along, okay? And if you have questions, email me. So what we want to do is add some grids to our page. So we're going to go to Layout and Create Guides. We don't need any rows. We're going to set our columns to 8 and then our gutters to 72. And then down here, go ahead and hit this Fit Guides to Margins page instead of Fit Guides to Page. Okay, and go ahead and click OK. So now we're still in A parent. We should, in Mac, it's going to be in File. If you're on a PC, it'll be in Edit, but go ahead and click on Preferences. And we want Guides and Pasteboard. And what we want to do is you can see that this margin outside of the page is really short, and we want just a little bit more distance there. It's not terribly important that you do this, but it can help. So we're going to change that from 72 to 1000 down here in the bottom right. And that'll be fine, and we'll click OK. So now that that's set, we should be able to go back to our first spread, and we can see that they put the rulers and the guides in on all of our pages. Okay, so let's get started. First thing I want to do is, I have some of my tabs pulled out already. I'm just going to close these and reopen them all so that you have the same tabs that I have. So I have, I'll tell you what I'm going to be opening, and then I'll open them in front of you. I have layers, bookmarks, buttons, and forums, animation and media, and then I also have page transitions and hyperlinks. And then I also had some table styles in here, but we can open those a little bit later. So I'm just going to go through and say close tab group. Okay. And so now all I have are just the default property pages and CC library. So I'm going to go to window, and I'm going to select layers. That one's important. And I remembered those, so I'm going to close them. I'm also going to go to interactive, and this is where most of my tabs are going to be. I want animation, bookmarks, buttons and forums, hyperlinks, media, and page transitions. And we could go through a few others. I'll let you search them on Adobe if you're interested in any of the other ones, but these are the ones that we're going to cover for this particular lesson. So go ahead and open those up. Bookmarks, buttons and forums, page transitions, and media, and hyperlinks. Okay, so they might have come in different orders. You can rearrange them however works best for you, but that should just give you an idea of how I have my pages set up. So I'm going to set it to layers for right now and just minimize these. So the first thing that we're going to do is create that button that we had in the corner. So that's going to be this button right here, and there's actually two buttons behind it. So what I'm going to do is I'll zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to create a rectangle. Just draw out a rectangle, and then over in properties, I'm going to change the fill to a gray. So we'll click on the HSB for just a little bit of a warmer gray, maybe a little bit lighter than that. And I'm going to click in RGB and add that to RGB swatch. And we'll click OK. I don't want it to have a stroke. And then if I switch over to my selection tool, you can press V for that. I'm just going to click this yellow box right here, and that's going to give me these corners so that I can round them out. If I don't hold shift, it's going to round out every corner evenly. If I do hold shift, it's going to let me round out individual corners. So for me, I'm going to set that corner at about 40. You pick whatever you think looks best. So that's my outside button. I also want to make another one. So I'll hold Alt or Option if you're on a Mac and drag that down. This one's going to be for opening, and this one's going to be for closing. So for the opening one, I just need 3 lines. So I'm going to drag out a line. I'll hold shift so that it locks it in at 90 degrees. And over here on the right, I'm going to set the stroke to 10. And I want to set the color to paper or white. I'll grab my direct selection, or my regular selection tool, and I'll select that again. I'll hold Alt or Option if you're on a Mac, drag that straight down, and do it one more time so that I have 3. I'm going to grab all 3 of those. I'm going to center them, and then I'm also going to space them evenly, so distribute vertical centers. And so now when I move them over on top of my button, they should look something like this. I can squeeze them in a little bit if I want to. And that should be pretty good. I might move that up a little and just make them a little bit closer together. That looks pretty good. I'm going to do Control G to group them. That'll be Command G on a Mac. And then I'll click on the button itself too, and I'll center it that way. Okay, now I'm going to make the X for the other side. So I'm just going to grab a text box. Excuse me. I just am going to type X and make that a little bit bigger. Pick whichever font you like for your design. I'm going to go with this Blenny because I like the way that it looks, and I want that text to be paper as well. Okay, and now we should have covered this in InDesign 1, but just in case they didn't, I want to make this an object in itself. I don't want it to be a text box anymore. So if I select the text and go to Type, Create Outlines, that means that my X is no longer an edible text piece. It's going to be a vector in and of itself. And so I'm going to copy that with Control C. You could also right click and click on copy. And then I'm going to paste that out here. And then I can delete this text box now. So now this X is an icon all on itself. I just want to make it a little bit smaller and center it onto my button. So now I have my open button and my close button. And if you look over here, what I ended up doing was I switched the open button so that it was white with gray lines instead of gray with white lines, so that you had a little bit more visual contrast with the background, but also so that you had a little bit more visual contrast with the event that you're trying to achieve. So you might consider doing that. We'll go ahead and do that now. So I'll change the fill background for the top button to paper, and I'll grab my lines and choose that gray for those. And I might make those just a little bit thicker, in fact. So we'll set that up to 14. Okay, so now I'm going to group those together. Control G. I'm going to select the bottom ones and group those together. Control G. And then back in my Layers tab, I want to name these. So if I turn these on and off, I know that this top one is button close menu, because it's going to close the menu. And then this other one is button open menu. And naming your layers for this is going to be so important. And then for this blue layer, layer 1, I'm just going to call this main menu. Okay, so we're off to a good start. I'm going to select both of these, go back to properties, and I just want to align them on top of each other. And I want to make sure that they are flush with the edge as well. I also, keep in mind, I would like to keep the open menu on top of the close menu, and I'll show you why in just a minute. Okay, so let's zoom out. And I'm going to grab a rectangle frame tool, and drag out to about that first gutter here. And this is going to be our pop-out menu. So what I'm making right now is this right here. So I'm going to need an image to place on that. So I'm going to go to my documents. I have everything in downloads, but hopefully you're a little bit more organized than me. And then I'm going to find my first crepe picture and drag and drop that in there. And so if I double click on that, you'll get that orange border, and you can make some changes to it. For me, I wanted mine to be rotated around and flipped horizontal. I'll go to transform, flip horizontal. Oh. There we go. And then I wanted to give myself as much white space on the top as I could, where you could just barely see those crepes. Because for me, I didn't have a lot of contrast with my picture. Hopefully, as designers, you guys are staying conscious of those things. And I think I like being able to see these little folds here. I think that that's a nice component of a crepe, you might say. So I'm going to rename my layer crepe menu picture. Okay, now I'm just going to drag that to the bottom. So now that's what I have so far. I might make my buttons a little bit smaller at this point, so I'll just grab both of those, hold shift on the corner, and drag that up. Same with the X, grab that, hold shift on the corner, and drag that up. Okay, so that's what I have now. That might be able to get even smaller. And then I'm going to grab my picture and just drag it to the left of the document. So if I press W now, you can see that it's not on my document at all. It's all the way off. And so here's where we're going to start doing a little bit of the electronic publishing part. So I'm going to grab animation, and I'll select my, actually wait, getting a little bit ahead of myself. One more thing before I get too far. I'm going to add a text box, and I'm just going to name some of my layers. So I'm going to say we need sweet crepes, savory crepes, poke bowls, boba tea, and about us. There we go. So I'll zoom out, and for me, I have some of my paragraph styles saved from our menu last week, and so I'm going to go ahead and set that here. Oh, I guess I don't actually. That's okay. Let's just remake it then. So I'm going to make those a little bit bigger, set them centered, and then I had that set as Britannica bold, I believe. Britannic, sorry. And then I can just squish that down a little bit. And I want to make sure that this fits onto my my little image here. I can even space those out a little bit more. So we talked about that a little bit last week, I think. But you can go over here to the leading tab and just, I'm holding shift while I'm pressing so that it's counting by 10. But you can space those out just a little bit more. Make sure you don't lose that last one. Okay, so now that I have those, I'm going to select both of them and group them together. I'm also going to center them. There we go. Center. Now I can group them. Control G. If I go back to my layers, you can see my group. I'm going to call that menu. Maybe side menu would be better. We'll just stick with menu for now. Okay, now we're going to get into animating. So I have menu selected, my group, and so it's already named it for me, menu. I'm going to choose, move right. And so that's going to create a path for me right here, that green line. I want to move it about halfway between this distance because it's starting halfway between my box. So this is where it's saying it's going to travel to. So that probably will put us right there when it gets in. And we'll see how it looks in just a second. So for now we have it set to on page load. We have it set to 1 second. And then for speed, I'm going to set ease out. I might speed that up just a little bit also. So to speed that up, we want it to move in half a second instead of in 1 full second. But whatever you think looks best for your work, set it to that. So if you click on this little icon down at the bottom left, it says preview spread EPUB. That should pull up a window kind of like this, and it's going to play your animation. And you can see I missed a little bit, so I can go back. I'll just shrink that a little for now. So I can go back to this path. If it'll let me select it, there we go. And I can squeeze that down just a little. So let's try that again. And that looks pretty good to me. Okay, so let's go back to layers and make sure that that's below our buttons so that when it plays, you still see the button. Okay? So for me, I have my logo that I made earlier from my menu, but let's go ahead and follow those steps again just to make it an icon one more time. So I'll drag out a text box. I'll type in the one cafe. I know it's really tiny right now. Give me 1 second. Okay, so I have it selected. I'll make it big enough to see. I'll select the in the one cafe and shrink that down. That could be a little bigger. And then I also, this won't matter too much, but I do want that to be a little closer. Okay, so now I can also go back into type and create outlines, and that's going to make an icon out of both of these. What it does is it separates it by line. So we'll copy and paste and then we'll copy and paste one cafe. I'm pressing Control C and Control V. It might be Command C and Command V for a Mac. And I just want to align both of those to the left. And this is what I'm talking about where making the spacing didn't really matter because I can move those around now. I'm going to group those together by selecting them and pressing Control G. And then up in my layers, I'm just going to name that logo. Okay. And so I want that to be on the left side and I want it to be on the top because I want that to be right behind here. And we know that since this should go to this guideline, this should be just about centered in between that. Okay, so let's go back to our animation and just test that out really quick. Okay, that looks good to me. You can see on my original that I ended up setting that to white and I gave it a drop shadow. For some reason in my final document that drop shadow wasn't appearing, but we'll take what we can get. So I'll go ahead, go back to properties and set that fill to paper. And then I'll also go ahead and add a drop shadow to it just in case it works this time. So I think it'll be 10 and 10. And then I'll set that opacity to maybe 30. Just a subtle shadow. So now if I press W, this is all you can see. And when I click this button, we want this to fly in. So let's go back to our layers and switch over to the bookmarks tab. Oh, I can close that really quick. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to buttons and forms. And I'm first going to click on button open menu. So you can see that it's selected. I'm going to set that to button. We'll name it button open menu. And then we'll leave it on releaser tab. These other ones, they're good, but they are typically for if someone is using a desktop, and we want to make sure that this works on an iPad since that's how we set it. So you know, if you're on an iPad, you don't have a setting where you could roll over something or click something. You'll be tapping on it, right? And so we want it set on tap. We're going to press this plus sign, and then we're going to tell it that we want it to play this animation whenever we press on releaser tab on our open menu button. And so it only knows one animation that's in our database right now, and that's menu. And we just want it to say play. And then this is our appearance of the button. We'll change that in just a little bit. Okay, so what we have right now is when we press the button, it's going to open our menu. So let's go back to our animation tab now. And let me press W over here so we can see it. And then right now we have it set to on page load and on button event. And since we have the button set now, we can take off on page load. And so if we play that again up here in buttons, this is our default. When we click the button, it opens it up, but you can see that it doesn't close it yet. So what we need to do is hide the open button menu. There's a W on the end here. Let me fix that. So now we're seeing the X. So I'm going to choose button close menu, and I want to make that a button now. So we'll set that to button on releaser tab, button close menu, and then we'll add an action. We'll say animation again. We still want it to say menu, but in options instead of play, we want it to reverse. Okay, so now let's test that one out. So it is reversing, but now what we want to do is make sure that the menu open button disappears and switches over to the menu close button. So we're going to add a new, let me start over. We're going to select the button open menu. We're going to go to buttons and forms, and we're going to add a new event. And we want to go to show hide buttons and forms. And so it shows our buttons that we have currently. And right now, what we want to do is make sure that when we click the open menu button, we stop being able to see the open menu button. And we do want to see the close menu button. So we're going to turn the eyeball on for that and off for open menu button. And let's go back. When we click on the close menu button, we want to do the reverse. So we want to say show hide buttons and forms. And this time, we want to say that we don't want to see the close menu button. We do want to see the open menu button. And let's test that out. So when we click the open menu button, you can see that it switches to the close menu. And when we click it again, it switches back to the open menu. So now we have the start of an open or of a working animation for our website. So that's great. That's a great start. Okay, the next thing I want to do is go into media down here, and you can do a few things. And basically I just want to give you the opportunity to place your backgrounds, if you have colored backgrounds, if you have pictures, if you have videos. Let's drag out a frame. And this was giving me trouble whenever I tried to export it, but hopefully it works a little better for you. I have a video right here, and I just want to drag it in and place it. Oh, I guess we didn't need that frame. And you can see that that pops up in my media over here on the left. So if I hit play, you can see that it just rotates around. It's really pretty. I got this and all of the images that I'm using off of Pexels because it's license free, which means that you can use that in your portfolio. You don't have to credit and you don't have to pay anything, which is fantastic. So I'm going to scrub that back just a little bit. And right here, I'm going to say poster frame. What that means is essentially the thumbnail. So if it's not playing, we want to say from this current frame. And if we liked the one that had maybe the lemon, we could refresh, and now that is the current poster. But we'll go back. You can see it's updating over here now. And we'll say maybe there. That's the poster that I want. I want it to have a little bit of this on the side. Okay, and then there's a few more things that I want you to check. We have 2 checkboxes that I do want you to click. The first one is play on page load, which means that whenever you open up this page, it should start playing automatically. And then the second one, play in loop, is whenever this plays, it doesn't stop at the end and freeze, it loops back around and continues forever. Okay, so I'm not going to keep that playing over here because I don't want it to overwhelm my computer. But I'm just going to drag and place that over here. And I can crop in these edges. And if it's not working for you, go ahead and use an image or just a full color, anything like that. Okay, and then lastly, let's add a new layer. So now we have a red layer up here. I want to move that down to the bottom of the stack. So I have main menu and layer 2, and I want that video to be part of layer 2. So let's drag that into here. There we go, and I'll just rename it. Green crepe video. Okay. That'll tell me what it is, no problem. I'm just going to lock it so that I'm not clicking it constantly. And let's go ahead and go back to our buttons and forms and try playing that just to see how things are working. Okay, so we've loaded up the page. And as I click on my button, it should still be operational. Now these are just a text box right now, so we need to make those link to the next pages, okay? So let's do a few things. First, let me go back to my Pages tab. And what you'll see is I have these 5 spreads over here. Oh, 6 spreads. Each of these and the home page needs to be a bookmark for you to be able to transition in between them. So we're going to open up this Bookmarks tab and the Pages tab, and let me go ahead and separate this for just a second. So I have bookmarks and I have my pages, and I want to name each of these. So for this first page, I have this first page selected. I'm just going to call that home. I'm going to select my second page, do that little plus sign icon to add a new bookmark, and then that is going to be called Sweet Crepes. Go to page 3. This will be Savory Crepes. Back to page 4. This one is going to be Poke Bowls. Page 5 is going to be Boba Tea. And page 6, that is going to be called About Us. Okay, and I'm going to let you decide what you want the content to be. This is your document. It's for your portfolio. I want you to have fun and get to make the most of it. So back in my layers panel, I'm just going to rename this red section, layer 2, to page content. And then I'm just going to put that back into my stack over here. Okay, so if you remember, I locked that background image so I can't select it, right? But everything else is still selectable. And I'm going to show you something cool in just a minute, but keep that in mind, we do want that background layer locked. So we have all of these icons right here, and we want to make each of these an outline. So we're going to go back to type and say create outlines. And we'll have to copy and paste those out one by one. Okay, so all I need to do is about line that up with the top and bottom one. And then I can select them, go to properties, and I'll just align them center. And I will distribute them evenly. And now I can delete this text box. Oh, right. So let's go back into our layers. So what we have here in our main menu is we have a bunch of these compound paths, and we also have this group that we created, right? So if we go back to menu, we have our text frame and our create menu picture. We don't need the text frame anymore, but we do still need that group. So if we undo that, I'm going to grab each of these compound paths and drop them into this group, and now I can delete the text frame. Maybe if it'll let me select just the text frame. There we go. And so now all of these compound paths down to the create menu, I want to select all of those, go back to properties, and I just want to center those to each other, and I want to move that back to the edge of our document. And it's probably a smart idea to name each of these, so go ahead and go through and put them in order. And this is just best practice. It'll help you stay organized. And in my experience, the more organized you are, the faster you go. Okay, so since that's in our menu group, and since we made the animation from that group, anything that we made changes to, as long as that group is still in place, is going to follow that animation. So we can test that out really quick. Let's go to buttons and go ahead and make sure that it is working properly. Okay, so we can see everything still moved in the way it was supposed to. So now let's make each of these a button. So it might be easier to pull out our layers for this and keep buttons on the side over here. Alright, so when we click on Sweet Crepes and I have that selected, I want to say that that's going to be a button. I'm going to name it Sweet Crepes button. On releaser tap, and in the actions I want it to say go to destination. And it's going to give us a little bit of a menu. And so it's going to say in this document, right now I haven't titled it, so it's Untitled 1. The destination it's thinking to send us to is About Us. We want to send it to Sweet Crepes. We can leave it on Inherit Zoom. And if we wanted to add some visual differences, we could choose these rollover or click icons. So let me give you an example. So when we click Sweet Crepes, we can change the color to, let's just do magenta for now, just to see what it looks like. So when we test it out, we have that rollout, and when I click on it, you can see that the color is changing. And if we do rollover, so let's do the same thing, we'll make it something a little bit bright, a little bit jarring, just so that you can see it, and then we'll change it later to something nice. Back to buttons. Okay, so we open our menu. When I roll over it, it turns blue. When I click it, it turns magenta. But you can see it's not, in our preview, it's not going to be transitioning to the other pages. Once we export it, it will. Slowly, but it will. But in InDesign, we have to just make sure that we're doing it right. So we know that it's going to the Sweet Crepes page. And then let's go ahead and change those rollover settings. So what we might do is have it stay black and have it just go a little bit lighter like this. So maybe set that to 50. And in fact, let's leave it 100% for the rollover, and on click we'll have it change to 50. And we'll leave the fill set to black. Or we could change it to gray. That's up to you. It's a design decision. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with each of these. I'm going to speed up the video here. But if you need to slow it down or if you need to repeat it, all I'm doing is copying the same thing that I did with the Sweet Crepes, but for each of these tabs. Okay, so now everything should be leading us to the right destination. And the last thing I want to do is go up to the logo and add a button for that as well. I'll call it Home Button. And I want to do the same thing. I want to send it to the home page. Okay, so now everything should be linking properly. I'm just going to drag my Layers tab back into my panel here. And so what should happen is, let it load for a sec. When I click my buttons, it should transition us to each of the pages down below. It can't in the preview, so we have to just assume that it's doing the right thing. So now let's add one more box in here. Actually, let's add two more boxes, I'm sorry. So the first one I'm going to add is just a black box, no stroke, and I want to click this FX button and choose gradient feather right here. And what that's going to do is give me just a little bit of a shadow so that I can see things on top of my picture. If you don't need this, you don't have to have it. But I'm going to click OK. And let's go back to the layers and just rename that gradient. And drag that down to page content. So now my one cafe should stick out a little bit stronger. Gives it just that much more contrast. And if that's something that I need to edit or adjust so that I can see my picture better, or if I can see my logo better, then that's something as a designer that I can control. Okay, and one more box. This is going to be our pop-up menu. So I'm going to go to Properties. I'll set the stroke to none. I'll set the fill to black. I want the opacity to be down. And I want rounded corners for this one. So we could do the same thing that we did with the buttons before, where we clicked the yellow box and changed the corners on our own independently. We can also change the corners up here. That looks pretty good to me. So I'm just going to add a text box and drag that over. Okay. And I can add in here, we could say order online. And I don't need it to be that large actually, so I could just have it about like that. We can center it to each other. And then below that, I could say join our mailing list. Set that to regular center. And extend it just a little. Okay, if we wanted those to be buttons, we could. Same way that we made our menu on the side. For now, I'm just going to leave them as text, but you should know the steps by now to make them into a button. So I'll just say pop-up menu, and I'll leave that how it is. I'll grab both of those and do Control G to group them. I'll rename the whole thing pop-up menu. And then I'll go to animation and choose fly in from bottom. And I want that one to be on page load. So now what that will do is whenever the page has loaded, okay, so we have our video playing, but it looks like our pop-up menu might be behind that layer. Drag that down here, and let's see if that works now. But this is why we want to test things. That's interesting. Our page has loaded, and you can see that I have a little icon popping up here. There it goes. So that took just a little bit too long to load up. We'll say for speed. We'll leave it from preset. We'll shrink that timing, and that should be good. If we need to change it later whenever we export it, we can. But let's go ahead and continue on. So now you know how to make some online page menu load ups. You also have a splash page here playing a really pretty video. You have a button with a menu. Now what I want you to do, I'm going to lock that gradient. So now I don't have anything that's selectable over here. And I'm pressing Control L to lock everything, but you can also lock things from your layers here. And I don't want these locked. There we go. So only thing I want locked is this page content section. So I'm going to select everything in my main menu. I'll press W so I can see it all. And I'm going to do Control C. And then when I click on my pages below that, I'm going to do Control Alt Shift and V. And the equivalent to that is paste in place. So that's edit, paste in place, and it'll have I think it'll be Command Option Shift V for a Mac. But that's just going to paste in all of our buttons and all of those actions that are associated with those buttons as well. So we'll do Control Alt Shift V again on page 3. Page 4, do the same thing. 5 and 6. So these are all paste in place, and that should mean that anytime we're on any of these pages, if we were to click the logo, if we were to click About Us, anything like that, it's going to take us to that accurate page. Okay, so now that we have that, it's a little bit more up to you on creating those pages, making them look the way that you want them to. For me, what I did was I made sure that there was a background image on each of these and my table. And I copied that table from my menu design, so you should be able to do the same thing. And then lastly, I put in another pop-up box with just some text that has the About Us section and that picture. You can see that on some of these I have a white gradient over my background, and on some of these I have a black gradient. So if I go back to my page that we're working on, I can show you how to make that change really quick. So right now my gradient layer is locked, but let's unlock it. And when I click it and go to properties, we have that gradient feather on already, so all we would need to do is change the color from black to white. We could change it to yellow, we could change it to blue. We could change it to gray, anything like that. Whatever's going to give us the best contrast. Okay. So let me go ahead and add in some of those pictures really quick, and I'm just going to mute for a second. So that is basically everything is placed now. I'm going to add in a little bit of animation to this last page. So I'm going to group these together. Go to animation. I should have named my group. We'll call it About Us. Section. Animation. We'll choose Fly In from bottom again on page load, and we'll just test that out. There we go. Okay. So there's only a couple things I want to show you now. First, let's add a hyperlink. So what we need here is a URL and the name of that hyperlink. So we're going to create a text box, and we'll just call it website for now. I don't think I spelled that right. So close. So I'll just put that down there. I'll even add it to the group for About Us so that it applies up too. And let's go to hyperlinks now. Now it's going to ask, where do I want to hyperlink this to? We could put that as social media. So if we found that social media link, let's just send it to Adobe InDesign. We'll teach it how to okay. Okay, we pasted that in. We just named it website. So now when we click that, when it loads, it should just pull up that tab, which is going to be a little funny, but it's just going to pull up that page, and there's no errors you can see on that status. So that could be ways to contact them. That could be a link to Google Maps of their location. That could be a link to their social media. It could link to an outside website. Maybe they have like a sister business or something that they're connected with. All kinds of things. We have it just website straight up for now. The other thing is I wanted to show you how to generate a QR code. And it's pretty simple. It's really similar to the hyperlink. And I'm going to make it on this website, but what you would use it for is placing it on your menu. So first thing, let's save this. We'll do save as. We'll call it first name, last name, your first name, your last name. Week 2, interactive menu, and you don't need to call it demo. I'll name mine demo B because this will be my second. So now we've saved our document. Next, what we need to do is export, and what we're going to do is this publish online button. So we'll click on that, and hopefully that's all of your links are working because it takes a little bit of time for it to export. But we'll call it the One Cafe Demo Site, and we can just click publish. Everything else should be just default, and it'll take it a little bit to get everything ready to go, and it'll pull it up in a sec. Okay, so we have your document was successfully uploaded. We can click view document, or we can click this copy to get the link. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to click view document. So now we have our demo site. Okay, and like I said, some of the videos were having trouble with mine from the first attempt. But we have our pop-up menu popping up, and we have our animation of our side menu, our navigation here. So let's start by just clicking through and making sure that it goes to each of the pages that it's supposed to. And each page is connecting to the intended page And if I click on the logo here, it should take me back to the top. Now my video is playing even, which is great. I'm still a little bit curious about why this pop-up isn't working properly. And I can see over here on the left edge, some of that gradient didn't come all the way through. So we can work on that just a little bit. That's in our timing. But this is a good start so far. And you can see that it also gave us that link. So let's go back to InDesign. And I'm just going to create a QR code now. So we're going to go to Object, Generate QR Code. And the content here is what we're going to paste. So that's going to be our link. Then we can go to color. We can make that whatever we want it to be. Maybe we'll make it that gray that we didn't really use too much of, or maybe we'll make it white. That's just going to be what the color of the QR code is. So maybe we'll just paste that right here. And now we have that scannable QR code. So what should happen is when we scan that with our phones or something else, maybe our iPad, something like that, it should take us to this link. So then we'll be able to open it up and interact with it that way. So that would be perfect for your trifold menus. If you had a printed out trifold menu and you wanted to connect people to the menu to be able to order online, to be able to see a drinks menu, to be able to see just links to their social media, to their website itself, that's perfect for that. You just want to make sure that you have enough contrast to be able to scan it. So it'd be really bad to place it up here on that white area where you can barely see it. Even here is too soft. You want it to be either, you just want a lot of high contrast basically. So I'm going to delete that, but now you should know how to make it. And I'd like you to generate a QR code and save that as well. So maybe you could put that up here. So we'll go back up to the top, generate QR code. It has it saved already. It hasn't changed. So we'll just click OK. And I'll put it up here on the first page. I can go in my layers. It's named QR code already for me. And I'll just put that in my pop-up menu. And then let's take a look at that pop-up menu as well. So the last thing I'm going to do is go to timing. And right now it's set to on page load. And it has a delay. I don't want it to have a delay, but it doesn't look like it does already. So it might just be that it's buffering a little bit on that page load. It might be that the video is slowing things down because it's the same animation that should be playing as this down here. So it doesn't seem like there's any problems with it. It just is a buffering issue. So I'll go ahead and save my document. And then I also, to turn this in, I'm going to export it. And we'll do a PNG document. And we'll click save. And it's going to have a range. We want it to have all pages. And we'll just do -1 or page 1, page number. And so it's showing you an example of how that's going to look. It'll say Chloe Ellie Ma'am, week 2, interactive menu. Mine says demo page, and then page number. Alrighty. Everything else should be fine, so we'll just click export. Okay, great. So now if I go to my documents, what I should have are PNGs of each of my pages. They don't have the menu in them, but it'll help for critique just so that we can all see them together. Turn in the text that has your link to your demo also, so we can pull that up together, and turn in your InDesign file. And that should have everything that you need. And yeah, I'm also going to be extending the turn-in, so that will be due on Wednesday the 17th instead of Sunday the 14th, so that you have a few more days to work on it since the demo took so long to get out, and it gives you a little bit of time to ask me questions if you need any help. But go ahead and get started on that, and I'm sure you guys will do a really good job. It's just learning the tools are a little bit difficult, but yeah, looking forward to it. All right, I think that's all. Good night, you guys.